The ocean has always felt like a living entity to me, breathing and pulsating under the vast stretch of the sky. I remember the first time I set sail with my father. I was just a boy then, thrilled by the infinite horizon that promised adventure. Sailing became my life, a calling as inevitable as the tides themselves. There's a solitude in being out at sea, a profound solitude that both humbles and exalts. The North Pacific, with its endless expanse and unpredictable moods, was my favorite. I've always found it to be a place where reality and imagination dance closely, sometimes indistinguishably. It was during one of these voyages, venturing deeper into the heart of the Pacific, when the normal rhythm of my life began to shift. I captained a sturdy vessel, the Orpheus, a ship built for endurance and grace. My crew, a seasoned group of sailors, trusted me implicitly. We were on a standard route, navigating away from the last port city for what was supposed to be a straightforward journey. The sky was draped in its usual cloak of stars when it all began. I stood on deck, inhaling the cold, salty air, lulled by the soothing sound of waves lapping against the hull. It was then that I first noticed it, a light on the horizon. At first, I thought it was another ship, perhaps following a similar course. Yet, as the hours passed, the light neither drew nearer nor faded into the distance. It remained constant, a solitary point illuminating the edge of the world. It was an odd sort of light, neither flickering like a flame, nor steady like a lighthouse beam. There was something unnervingly captivating about it. Naturally, I dismissed it as a trick of the mind or an atmospheric anomaly. We were, after all, in a part of the world where natural phenomena could often be mistaken for otherworldly occurrences. I mentioned it casually to my first mate, Kenneth, a man of few words but great intuition. He squinted towards the horizon, his face impassive, before nodding as if it were nothing of concern. But the light persisted, and with each passing night, it seemed to grow brighter. Even my crew, seasoned as they were, began to murmur about it. Whispers floated across the deck, tales of ghost ships and the restless spirits of sailors lost at sea. I tried to quell the superstitions, reminding them of navigational anomalies and the sheer vastness of the ocean that could play tricks on the mind. Still, the air aboard the Orpheus grew tense, an invisible shroud of unease settling over us. As we continued to sail, the light took on an almost hypnotic presence. It was there, an uninvited companion, a beacon that seemed to watch us rather than be watched. One night, as I lay in my cabin, staring at the ceiling, I heard a knock. It was Kenneth. He sat heavily on the chair opposite my bunk, his eyes searching mine. "Captain, I've sailed these waters my whole life," he began, his voice a low rumble, "and I've never seen anything like that light. It doesn't behave like any natural phenomenon I know." His admission was unsettling. Kenneth was not prone to flights of fancy. If he was concerned, there was reason to be. We decided to alter our course slightly, to approach the light and investigate, if only to lay our fears to rest. It was a calculated decision, one made with the full consent of the crew, driven by curiosity and a desire for resolution. The following day, we changed direction, steering the Orpheus towards the mysterious light. As we did, a strange calm settled over the ocean, the waves gentling until the water resembled a vast, shimmering mirror. The sky above was an unbroken dome of blue, the sun a watchful eye. Yet beneath this serenity, there was an electric tension, a sense of anticipation that buzzed in the air and prickled at my skin. By nightfall, the light had grown perceptibly closer. It was no longer a distant glow, but a distinct presence, casting a soft, eerie radiance over the water. It was beautiful in a way that defied description, an ethereal glow that seemed to pulse in time with some unseen rhythm. We stood at the bow, my crew and I, our eyes fixed on this hypnotic beacon. As the hours ticked by, our excitement gave way to a creeping unease. The light, now almost directly in front of us, revealed no source, no ship, no island. nothing to account for its existence. It hovered above the water like a suspended lantern, an impossibility that defied the laws of nature. That night, as I stood watch, I felt the first tendrils of an unfamiliar dread unfurl in my chest. There was something in the air, a disquieting presence that seemed to thrum through the ship. I found myself looking over my shoulder, half expecting to see a shadow lurking behind me. But there was nothing, only the relentless whisper of the sea and that eternal, enigmatic light. The following days were marked by a growing sense of disorientation. The light, ever present, seemed to exert a strange pull on us. Our instruments began to malfunction, compasses spun erratically, and our map seemed suddenly unreliable. It was as if the ocean itself was conspiring to keep us within this surreal liminal space, where time and direction lost their meaning. Conversations aboard the Orpheus dwindled to terse exchanges. My crew moved about their duties with a haunted look in their eyes, as if they were fighting a battle only they could see. Kenneth approached me on the third day, his face drawn and pale. "Captain, we need to turn back," he said, his voice strained. "There's something not right here. This light, it's affecting us." I nodded, the decision both a relief and a burden. Yet, as we tried to change course, we found ourselves caught in a peculiar current, one that seemed determined to draw us ever closer to the light. It was as though the ocean itself had become an accomplice in this bizarre game, a sentient force that refused to let us go. The climax came on a night when the air was thick with tension, a palpable charge that crackled through the ship. We had drawn so close to the light that it bathed the deck in a ghostly glow. From every angle, it pressed in upon us, a luminous entity that seemed to whisper secrets only the sea could know. As I stood at the helm, the light suddenly flared, an explosion of brightness that stole the breath from my lungs. In that instant, I felt a presence, vast and incomprehensible, brushing against the edges of my mind. It was as if the light itself was alive, sentient and aware, its radiance a conduit for something ancient and unknowable. My knees buckled beneath me, and I collapsed onto the deck. Around me, my crew cried out, their voices a chorus of fear and awe. The light pulsed, a rhythmic vibration that echoed through the ship, resonating with the beat of our hearts. It was at once beautiful and terrifying, a glimpse into the infinite that no mortal should witness. And then, as suddenly as it had come, the light began to recede, drawing back into itself with languid grace. Its departure left a void, a profound darkness that was more than the absence of illumination. It was as if the very texture of reality had been altered, leaving us adrift in a sea of shadows. In the days that followed, the Orpheus drifted aimlessly, the crew and I like sleepwalkers in a world that felt both familiar and foreign. The instruments resumed their normal function, the sea no longer conspiring against us. Yet a silence had settled over us, a shared understanding that what we had encountered was beyond human comprehension. We eventually made our way back to familiar waters, the light on the horizon a memory that haunted the edges of our consciousness. I found myself replaying those nights over and over, seeking meaning in the inexplicable, a narrative to fit the fragments of experience that refused to coalesce. The crew dispersed, some returning to the safety of land, others seeking solace in the routine of new voyages. Kenneth, who had stood by me through the ordeal, chose to leave the sea behind, the encounter having shaken him to his core. As for me, the ocean still calls a siren song that I cannot resist despite the shadows that linger at the periphery of my mind. Even now, as I write this account, I feel the presence of the light, a distant whisper that rises and falls with the tide. It is a reminder of the unfathomable depths that lie beyond our understanding, a testament to the mysteries that the world holds in its embrace. The light on the horizon may have faded, but its memory endures, an eternal beacon that calls to the deepest part of my soul. The sea has always been a vast, enigmatic expanse, embracing secrets as old as time. It was under this great azure sky, aboard the SS Calypso that I found myself entangled in a narrative that would blend the surreal with the terrifying. Our mission seemed simple enough, an oceanographic study near the Mariana Trench, the deepest part of the world's oceans, lying somewhere between Guam and Palau. We were a team of reputable scientists, seasoned oceanographers, and marine biologists with a singular goal: to map unknown currents and catalog unique marine life forms. Yet, unbeknownst to us, our true mission harbored a clandestine thread that would unravel our sense of reality. The first few weeks at sea were marked by a routine that lulled us into a deceptive sense of normalcy. The Pacific stretched endlessly around us, serene and inviting, with its repetitive lullaby of waves lapping against the hull. Every morning, the sun rose with the promise of clarity, casting its golden light across our vessel, banishing the shadows of the night. We dined together, an eclectic group bound by shared purpose and mutual respect. Conversations over meals were filled with academic banter, predictions of what our sonar might reveal, or debates over the latest scientific journals. My own role was that of an observer, a chronicler of sorts, tasked with documenting our findings for future generations. The ocean's whispers were my muse, and I took solace in the rhythmic monotony of it all. I often found myself on deck, my journal in hand, letting the salty breeze carry my thoughts to distant places. It was easy to forget the world beyond our floating sanctuary amidst the boundless blue. This harmony was disrupted when we received a set of encrypted orders from our benefactors, the unnamed consortium funding our expedition. The message was delivered in the dead of night, a sealed envelope covered in cryptic symbols. Our captain, an experienced sailor with weathered features and a commanding presence, summoned the senior crew members, myself included, to the meeting room. As he opened the envelope, its contents cast a palpable shadow over us. We were to deploy a sophisticated device, capable of deep-sea transmission, at a specific set of coordinates. The device, a gleaming cylinder of metal and glass, had been with us all along, its true purpose hidden under layers of secrecy. At the time, the task seemed innocuous enough, if somewhat peculiar. Yet, the coordinates pointed not to any ordinary spot in the ocean, but to the peripheral zone of the Mariana Abyss, a place spoken of in hushed tones and shadowed by myth. The ocean, once our ally, now seemed a vast, inscrutable entity, hiding more than just marine life beneath its surface. The device was launched at dawn, descending into the depths with a grace that belied its potential. We watched in silence as it disappeared, its descent marked by the steady blinking of a red light, until it was consumed by the deep. Shortly after the deployment, the atmosphere aboard the Calypso shifted. The crew, once vibrant and animated, grew subdued, their laughter replaced by furtive glances and whispered conversations. The air carried a tension that clung to us, an invisible fog that blurred the distinction between reality and imagination. I sensed an unsettling presence, as if an unseen entity shadowed our every move, probing our thoughts, seeking entry into the fortress of our minds. It was then that the dreams began. Vivid, otherworldly visions that invaded my sleep, leaving me gasping for breath and drenched in sweat. In these dreams, I stood on a precipice, overlooking an endless ocean that pulsed with a strange luminescence. Beneath its surface, shadowy forms writhed and coiled, ancient beings that exuded a primal energy. They sang to me, their voices a haunting chorus that tugged at the edges of my consciousness, imploring me to understand their message. Each dream ended the same way, with a vision of an immense creature rising from the depths, its eyes glowing with an intelligence that transcended time. It would gaze at me, and I would awaken with a start, my heart pounding like a drum in the silence of the night. The dreams left me shaken, but I dared not speak of them, fearing ridicule and the erosion of my credibility. Yet deep down, I knew I was not alone in my suffering. As days passed, the dreams grew more intense, their influence seeping into my waking hours. I found myself inexplicably drawn to the ocean, spending more time on deck, staring into the abyss. The sea sang to me, its melody a tapestry of emotions that I could not unravel. My journal entries became disjointed, filled with cryptic symbols and phrases that seemed to spill from my pen unbidden. I began to lose track of time, each day blending seamlessly into the next. The crew, too, was unraveling. Arguments erupted over trivial matters, voices raised in anger that echoed across the ship. Some members locked themselves in their quarters, refusing to emerge for meals or meetings. It was as if we were all caught in a web of invisible threads, manipulated by an unseen puppeteer. The captain, usually a bastion of strength, grew withdrawn, his eyes shadowed by sleepless nights. In the midst of this chaos, the sonar detected an anomaly, a massive object, larger than any known sea creature, moving slowly towards our position. The readings were erratic, as if the ocean itself was distorting around the entity. The captain ordered a course change, yet it seemed no matter which direction we sailed, the anomaly followed us, drawing ever closer. Panic spread like wildfire, fueled by the relentless streams and the oppressive atmosphere. Desperation clawed at our sanity, and a mutinous whisper began to circulate among the crew. We needed answers, a way to break free from the cycle of dread that ensnared us. It was during one of these fraught nights that I found myself standing before the captain's door, driven by a compulsion I could not resist. Inside, the room was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of salt and sweat. The captain sat at his desk, the encrypted orders spread before him. His hands trembled as he gestured for me to sit. In a voice barely above a whisper, he revealed what he had concealed even from himself, the true nature of the device. It was designed not just for mapping or data collection, but as a receptor, a beacon to draw forth the unknown. Our benefactors had long suspected the existence of an ancient consciousness, deep beneath the Pacific, a being whose origins predated humanity. The device was meant to establish contact, to bridge the gap between our world and the primordial. The captain spoke of legends, of sailors who had encountered this entity and been forever altered by its presence. His voice broke as he confessed his own dreams, eerily similar to mine, and the growing certainty that we had awakened a force beyond our comprehension. Just as he finished, the ship lurched violently, throwing us to the floor. The lights flickered and died, plunging us into darkness, broken only by the occasional flash of lightning through the portholes. An unnatural silence descended, thick and oppressive, before it was shattered by a sound, a low, resonant hum that vibrated through the hull, setting our very bones on edge. We scrambled to the deck, where the crew had gathered, eyes wide with terror. The anomaly had arrived, and it was no mere creature of flesh and bone. The ocean swirled around us, alive with energy, as the entity manifested in a startling display of bioluminescence. It was both beautiful and terrifying, a living galaxy of light and shadow stretching across the water. Its eyes, vast and knowing, locked onto ours, and I felt the world tilt on its axis. A voice, not of sound but of thought, filled my mind. It spoke of the beginning, of a time when it had been one with the cosmos, a guardian of knowledge and memory. Millennia had passed since it had last sensed the minds of men, and it had watched, patient and silent, as empires rose and fell. Now, awakened once more, it sought to understand, to share its gifts with those who dared to listen. The crew stood transfixed, caught in a trance that blurred the lines between dream and reality. I felt the entity probe my thoughts, its presence warm and curious, yet tinged with a profound loneliness. It was ancient, older than the stars, and its wisdom was a double-edged sword, offering enlightenment, yet threatening to unravel the fragile fabric of human sanity. In that moment of connection, I glimpsed the vast tapestry of existence, the interconnected threads that bound us all to the universe. The entity showed me visions of the past and future, of worlds both familiar and alien. Yet, even as it shared its knowledge, I felt a creeping dread, the whisper of a truth too immense to grasp. As suddenly as it had come, the vision faded, leaving us adrift in a sea of uncertainty. The entity withdrew, its luminescence dimming as it sank back into the depths. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the mournful cry of the wind. We were left with only fragments of understanding, haunted by the echo of its voice. In the days that followed, the Calypso returned to Guam, the secrets of the depth sealed within our minds. The crew dispersed, each burdened with their own piece of the puzzle, the knowledge both a gift and a curse. Many chose to forget, burying the memories beneath layers of denial and rationality. Others whispered of the encounter in darkened rooms, their stories dismissed as the ravings of sailors driven mad by isolation. Yet for me, the experience lingered, an indelible mark on my soul. I could not shake the sensation of being watched, of an unseen presence that shadowed my every step. The dreams continued, though less frequent, their vivid imagery a reminder of what lay beneath the waves. I took to writing, pouring my thoughts onto the page in an attempt to make sense of the incomprehensible. But the words were empty, mere echoes of a truth beyond language. Even now, on quiet nights, I find myself drawn to the sea, to the rhythmic lull of the waves and the vast, open sky. I stand at the water's edge, listening for the song that once called to me from the deep. The ocean is a living entity, its mysteries entwined with our own, and I know that it waits, patient and eternal, for the day when we are ready to understand. Until then, I am left with the memory of that fateful voyage, a reminder of the thin veil that separates the known from the unknown. The entity's presence is a shadow that lingers at the edge of my consciousness, a primordial force that binds us all to the great, unfathomable ocean. And in my heart, I carry the haunting realization that we are not alone, that even in our solitude, we are connected through the silent, everlasting depths. The ocean has always been a realm of mystery and allure, a world as vast and enigmatic as the cosmos. It's a place where light fades and silence reigns, filling voids with the echoes of time itself. My fascination with the depths was a lifelong passion, a calling that led me to the southern coast of Greenland, where the waters were as cold and secretive as the ancient myths that surrounded them. I was part of a small team of oceanographers, funded by a modest grant and driven by an insatiable curiosity to explore the uncharted territory 594 feet below sea level. Our vessel, the Polaris, was equipped with advanced technology and manned by a tight-knit crew that shared my thirst for discovery. The plan was to study the unique marine life thriving under those extreme conditions, but I was searching for something more, a truth hidden in the darkness. We set sail one early morning, the sky a pale gray reflection of the icy waters beneath us. The sea was calm, a flat expanse stretching out to the horizon, broken only by the occasional cries of gulls. As we descended deeper, the sunlight filtered through the water with diminishing strength until it transformed into a dim, otherworldly glow. I watched from the observation deck as the world above slowly disappeared, replaced by an endless, mysterious blue. The first few days were uneventful, filled with routine observations and data collection. The crew maintained a steady rhythm, our lives punctuated by the hum of the vessel and the whisper of the ocean against the hull. There was something comforting in that predictability, in the way each day mirrored the last, even as we descended into the unknown. Then, everything changed. It started with a signal, an elusive blip on our sonar that defied explanation. At first, we dismissed it as a technical glitch, a minor hiccup in our otherwise seamless operation. But then it returned, persistent and unsettling. The blip was unlike anything we had encountered, a rhythmic pulse that seemed almost sentient in its cadence. The crew grew restless, the familiar routine disrupted by this anomaly. Conversations became hushed, and an air of unease settled over the vessel. The deeper we went, the more pronounced the signal became, as if it were guiding us into the heart of some hidden mystery. Despite the growing tension, I felt a thrill of excitement. Here was something unknown, a chance to uncover a secret that had eluded humanity for centuries. I spent hours poring over the data, analyzing the patterns in search of a clue that could unravel the enigma. My obsession with the signal consumed me, driving me further into the depths. The escalation came without warning. The signal intensified, a steady, insistent beat that echoed through the metal confines of the ship. Night and day blurred into one as the crew scrambled to understand its origin. Equipment malfunctioned, lights flickered, and whispers of doubt crept into our minds. Each anomaly seemed to bring with it a sense of foreboding, as if the ocean itself was warning us to turn back. It was during one of these tense evenings that we experienced the first true disturbance. As I reviewed the latest data in the control room, an unnatural darkness fell upon us. The lights dimmed to a faint glow, casting eerie shadows that danced across the walls. The signal, which had been a faint hum, now thrummed with an almost tangible presence. I felt a chill seize my spine, a primal instinct screaming that we were not alone. The deep was alive, aware of our intrusion, and it was responding. I turned to the crew, their faces pale and drawn in the dim light, eyes wide with a fear they dared not voice. The climax of our journey into the abyss came as the vessel shuddered, a low groan resonating through its steel frame. The sound was unlike anything I had ever heard, a mournful wail that seemed to rise from the very soul of the ocean. We rushed to the observation deck, peering into the murky blue for any sign of what lay beyond our fragile sanctuary. And then we saw a shadow, vast and formless, moving with a grace that belied its enormity. It drifted through the water with an almost hypnotic rhythm, a silhouette against the shifting currents. There was an intelligence to its movement, an ancient, unknowable sentience that regarded us with a detached curiosity. The enormity of the creature defied comprehension. It was as if the ocean itself had taken form, a leviathan born of the deep and shrouded in mystery. In that moment, I understood that we were intruders in its realm, insignificant in the grand tapestry of its existence. We watched, transfixed, as the shadow drifted closer, its presence filling the waters around us. The signal, now a deafening roar, vibrated through the vessel, harmonizing with the creature's movements in a symphony of the sea. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the shadow receded, dissolving into the darkness from whence it came. The signal faded, leaving a silence that was almost oppressive in its finality. The vessel, our solitary refuge, was all that remained in the vast emptiness of the ocean. As we began our ascent, a lingering fear settled over the crew. The encounter had left an indelible mark on our souls, a reminder of the depths we had plumbed and the secrets we had glimpsed. Each creak of the hull, each whisper of the ocean, carried with it the memory of the shadow, a presence that haunted our every waking moment. Back on the surface, the world seemed different, the familiar comfort of normalcy forever altered by what we had witnessed. We returned to our lives, carrying the weight of our experience like an anchor dragging through the seabed. The depths had revealed their truth, a glimpse into the infinite mysteries that lay beneath the waves. And while we may never fully understand what we had encountered, the knowledge that something greater awaited us far below lingered like a specter, a reminder of the vast unknown that existed beyond the reach of human understanding. In the quiet hours of the night, when sleep eluded me and the shadows danced upon the walls, I would hear the faint echo of the signal, a pulse that resonated in the deepest corners of my mind. It was a call, a beckoning from the depths that promised both wonder and terror in equal measure. And though fear gripped my heart, I knew that someday, somehow, I would return. For the ocean, in all its enigmatic glory, had become a part of me, a siren's call that I could never truly escape. In the vast, unending expanse of deep space, the universe feels like a quiet, endless ocean, where one can easily imagine the ship we inhabit as a solitary vessel adrift upon a cosmic sea. The stars outside our observation ports twinkle innocently, distant pinpricks of light that have traveled millions of years to meet our gaze. Our mission was straightforward. explore uncharted regions, cataloging any new celestial phenomena or potential resources for the ever-expanding human frontier. As a crew member aboard the ISS Perception, I found myself often lulled into a reflective state, contemplating the smallness of our existence amid the grandeur of the cosmos. The Perception was well equipped for our journey, a marvel of human engineering that seemed almost as sentient as the crew navigating her. Her corridors hummed with the steady rhythm of life support systems, and her sleek design was a testament to the symbiotic relationship between human ingenuity and the boundless mysteries of space. Life aboard the ship had settled into a comfortable routine. Each day was a progression of duties, observations, and data collection, punctuated by the camaraderie that only isolation can foster. Our expedition had been uneventful thus far, marked only by the occasional discovery of asteroids or unremarkable celestial bodies. That was until the day we received an unusual signal. It was faint, almost imperceptible against the cosmic background noise, yet persistent in its pattern. It drummed through the communication channels like a forgotten heartbeat, urging us to venture further into the unknown. With a mix of excitement and apprehension, the crew decided to follow the signal to its source. It led us to an obscure quadrant of space, a region that lay just beyond the fringes of our mapped territory. As we approached, something quietly shifted within the dynamics of our small world. An air of anticipation mingled with an undercurrent of unease, threading its way through the ship like a cold draft. What we found was a sight that defied our understanding, a floating mass of organic material, vast and intricate, suspended in the void. It wasn't a planet, nor was it an asteroid, but a gargantuan plant-like structure, its tendrils sprawling in every direction, weaving through the dark fabric of space. Its surface pulsated with a soft, eerie luminescence, as though it harbored a secret life beneath its alien skin. Our scanners struggled to classify it, their instruments confounded by its complexity. It seemed alive, yet not in any form known to us. Intrigued, we decided to study it more closely. We launched drones to gather data, their mechanical eyes capturing images of the entity's strange elegance. It was both beautiful and unsettling, an anomaly that seemed to exist outside the natural order. At first, our observations yielded little more than confusion. The entity absorbed electromagnetic radiation, drawing energy from the surrounding starlight. Its surface bore textures and patterns that hinted at an intricate internal structure. There was a silent communication occurring, a language of pulses and waves that eluded our comprehension. The disturbance began subtly. It was as if the ship itself had taken a deep breath. Systems that had functioned flawlessly began to falter. Lights flickered, casting long shadows that danced ominously across the walls. The air took on a peculiar quality, heavy and charged with an invisible tension. There was a palpable sense of being watched, of not being alone in our solitude. Our scientific curiosity demanded answers, yet with each passing moment, the unease grew. Crew members who had once seemed unshakable started to report strange dreams, visions of an endless sea of green, of being enveloped and consumed by a living tapestry. Their descriptions were hauntingly vivid, as if these dreams were not mere figments, but memories etched into their consciousness by an unseen hand. Despite the growing disquiet, we pressed on, determined to unlock the secrets of the entity. We established a tether to the ship, a fragile line connecting us to the anomaly, allowing us to transmit data and sustain our fragile link to the rest of humanity. But as we delved deeper into its mysteries, the escalation became undeniable. Our instruments began to malfunction in earnest, readings fluctuating wildly without explanation. Communication with Earth was gradually obscured by interference, static-filled transmissions that left us isolated in our quest for understanding. There was a sense of being drawn closer, as if the entity itself beckoned us, pulling us into its embrace with an irresistible force. One night, our worst fears manifested. The organic mass seemed to reach out, tendrils unraveling and stretching towards the ship with a deliberate intent. No longer was it content to remain a passive enigma. It had become an active threat. The ship shuddered as if caught in a tempest, alarms blaring as the entity's appendages coiled around the perception, constricting and suffusing our vessel with its presence. Panic set in among the crew. Orders were issued, strategies debated in hurried voices tinged with fear. We knew we had to sever the tether to escape the clutches of the entity before it could consume us entirely. Yet, each attempt to break free was met with resistance, as if the entity anticipated our every move, countering our efforts with an intelligence both alien and patient. In the climax of our struggle, we faced the entity directly. Its tendrils had infiltrated the ship's systems, intertwining with our technology in a grotesque fusion of biology and machinery. It spoke to us in pulses of light and energy, a language not meant for human perception, yet conveying a singular, terrifying message. It was hungry. Our desperation fueled a final plan. We overloaded the ship's energy reserve, channeling a surge of power through the tether, hoping to stun the entity long enough to break free. The risk was immense, the outcome uncertain, but our options were dwindling, and the entity's grip tightened with every moment. The ship groaned under the strain, systems protesting as we initiated the overload. There was a brilliant flash, a moment of blinding light that seared across the darkness. The entity recoiled, its tendrils withdrawing in response to the fierce onslaught. With a final, concerted effort, we severed the connection, the ship lurching away from the anomaly's grasp. In the silence that followed, we were left adrift, our systems crippled, our crew exhausted. The entity faded into the background, its presence no longer an immediate threat, but its memory etched into our minds like a scar. We had survived, but the encounter had left an indelible mark on our souls. The journey home was fraught with tension, the crew haunted by what we had seen, what we had narrowly escaped. Dreams of verdant expanses continued to plague us, echoing the entity's lingering influence. The stars, once a source of wonder, now seemed indifferent, their light casting shadows that whispered of unseen dangers. Back on Earth, the incident was classified, our findings sealed away in the interest of security. But we knew the truth, the reality of what lay beyond our comprehension in the vastness of space. The Devourer, as we had come to call it, was a reminder that the universe harbored both beauty and terror, bound together in a delicate balance. The fear lingered long after our return, a quiet dread that settled into the corners of our minds. We had glimpsed the depths of the unknown, and it had stared back, hungry and inscrutable. As I sit here, recounting our ordeal, I find myself drawn back to the stars, to the mystery that awaits in the darkness. Perhaps someday we will venture forth again to seek out the secrets whispered by the cosmos. Until then, the Devourer remains an enigma, a shadow on the edge of perception, waiting patiently in the silent void. The GE-1 mission was a beacon of humanity's ambition, designed to push the boundaries of exploration. It was a small, sleek spacecraft, its outer shell reflecting the cosmos with an elegant simplicity that belied the complexity of its inner workings. The mission's objective was straightforward yet profound: to venture into the unknown reaches of deep space, collect data, and return with insights that might illuminate the mysteries of our universe. On Earth, we were captivated by GE-1's journey. Its signals reaching us through the vast void were like whispered secrets from the stars themselves. The craft's return was eagerly anticipated, and its re-entry into Earth's atmosphere was a moment of triumph. The Pacific Ocean was chosen as the landing site due to its vastness and relative isolation. I was part of the retrieval team, a group of scientists and engineers dispatched to recover GE-1 and its precious cargo. As our vessel sliced through the ocean waters, the excitement on board was palpable. We were about to lay our hands on a piece of the cosmos, a tangible connection to the otherworldly. The first disturbance occurred soon after we retrieved the spacecraft. Even before we cracked it open, something felt off. The air around the G1 was charged, as if the atmosphere itself was aware of its return. Static seemed to hang heavily, clinging to our skin and hair, making the hairs on the back of my neck stand erect. The ocean around us was unusually still, a vast, reflective mirror that tricked the eye and lent the scene an unsettling tranquility. When we finally opened the hatch, a cold gust of air escaped, biting through our suited skin with an unnatural chill. Inside, everything seemed in order at first glance. The instruments were intact, the data secured. Yet there was an inexplicable sense of intrusion, as if we were not alone in examining our find. We shrugged it off, attributing it to the isolation and fatigue of our mission. But as we began to analyze the data, the true nature of our predicament began to unfold. The escalation was subtle at first. I noticed it in the reflections. The mirrored surfaces of the craft's interior, polished to perfection, began to show imperfections. At times, I would catch glimpses of movement where there should be none. A flicker across the surface, a shadow that didn't belong. I dismissed these as tricks of the light, a result of hours spent under the harsh fluorescent lights of our temporary lab set up aboard the retrieval vessel. But as the days passed, the disturbances grew more pronounced. My reflection would linger a moment too long, an expression flitting across its face that I hadn't worn. Others on the team began to experience similar phenomena. Reflections mimicking actions we hadn't taken, whispering echoes of our own voices in the silence. It was as if the spacecraft had brought back an unseen presence, a silent companion that we could neither see nor understand. Fear spread through the team like a contagion. Some theorized it was a psychological response to the isolation and stress, a collective hallucination. Yet, deep down, we knew it was something more. The data we had retrieved was unlike anything seen before, filled with patterns that defied logic, as if the cosmos itself was speaking a language we could not comprehend. The climax came one night, as we drifted under a canvas of stars. I was alone in the lab, my colleagues having retreated to their quarters, seeking solace in the illusion of sleep. I was reviewing the latest data when I felt a shift in the air, a subtle change that prickled along my skin. My reflection in the porthole glass was watching me, its eyes burning with a cold intensity that was not my own. Panic gripped me, yet I was frozen, entranced by the impossibility of the moment. The reflection moved, its lips curving into a smile, mocking and knowing. It mouthed words I couldn't hear, but felt in the marrow of my bones, an invitation, a challenge. The unseen force, the mimicking alien glass, was reaching out, seeking to understand or perhaps to consume. I don't remember breaking the spell, only the sensation of stumbling backwards, the cold metal of the lab's walls grounding me in reality. When my colleagues found me, I was babbling, incoherent, my mind teetering on the edge of reason. We sealed the lab, quarantined the data, and initiated emergency protocols. Yet, the damage was done. In the aftermath, as we returned to Earth, the lingering fear took root. The ocean, once our ally, now seemed a vast expanse of potential malevolence. The stars, once guides, became distant eyes watching our every move. We had touched something in reaching beyond our world, something that had reached back. Our reflections were no longer ours alone. They were windows to another, alien perspective. Even now, back on solid ground, I can feel its presence. In mirrors, in the gleam of glass, I see the echo of that smile, the promise of a reality just beyond the veil of understanding. It is a reminder of the G1 mission and its silent hitchhiker, an unseen force that continues to cast its shadow over my life. We had ventured into the unknown, and in doing so, we had brought a fragment of the unknown home with us, a fragment that watches, waits, and whispers from the depths of the void. No one speaks openly of the mission anymore. It's as if discussing it might give life to the shadows that plague our memories. But in quiet moments, when the world is still and the mind wanders, I find myself revisiting that reflection, that smile. It is a mystery I cannot solve, a fear that lingers like a shadow at the edge of vision, a haunting reminder of the thin line between exploration and intrusion. And I wonder, with a shiver that dances along my spine, if we were the first to cross it, or merely the latest.
It was a peculiarly tranquil morning when I first arrived at the New Genesis Institute. The island lay shrouded in a gentle mist as our boat cut through the glassy waters, its engine purring with the steady hum of inevitability. I watched the shoreline approach with a sense of curiosity tinged with apprehension. The Institute had a reputation whispered about in academic circles with a mix of awe and trepidation as a place where boundaries were pushed and the moral fabric of science was tested. But I had been drawn here, irresistibly, by the promise of breakthroughs that could redefine our understanding of life itself. The island itself was a marvel, a testament to human ingenuity and perhaps hubris. Lush, tropical vegetation sprawled across the landscape, and the air was perfumed with the heady scent of flowers I could not name. The architecture of the buildings was sleek, modern, almost otherworldly against the backdrop of untouched nature. It was as if the structures had grown from the earth itself, a seamless blend of stone and glass that glimmered under the tentative gaze of the sun. Dr. Julian Mercer, the enigmatic director of the Institute, greeted me at the dock. His presence was immediately arresting, a tall figure with a shock of silver hair and eyes that seemed to pierce through the surface of reality. There was a calmness about him, a serene confidence that was both reassuring and unsettling. He spoke in measured tones, his voice smooth yet commanding, as he welcomed me to what he described as the frontier of human potential. The first few days passed in a blur of orientation sessions and introduction. The Institute was populated by a small, eclectic community of scientists, each a leader in their respective field. There was Dr. Emily Thorne, a geneticist with a fierce intellect and a wry smile, and Dr. Arjun Patel, a bioengineer whose work had already been hailed as groundbreaking. Together, they worked under Mercer's guidance, pursuing projects that could only be imagined in the most ambitious of dreams or nightmares. Life on the island settled into a rhythm. By day, we delved into research, our efforts aimed at unlocking the secrets encoded within strands of DNA. By night, we gathered for dinner in the glass-walled dining hall, sharing stories and theories under the stars. The isolation of the island fostered a sense of camaraderie, but there was also an unspoken understanding that the work we undertook was not without risk, both ethical and existential. The knowledge we got from the work was not without risk, both ethical and existential. It was during one of these evenings that the first disturbance made itself known. The dinner had been lively, filled with laughter and debate, when suddenly the lights flickered and dimmed. A collective pause settled over us, the kind that anticipates an explanation. Dr. Mercer rose from his seat, his expression a mask of composure, and assured us that it was a minor, technical glitch, an inconvenience, nothing more. Yet, the unease lingered long after the lights brightened. Over the following days, I began to notice subtle changes, a creeping disquiet that threaded itself through the fabric of our lives. There were reports of strange noises echoing through the corridors late at night, unidentifiable calls carried on the wind. Shadows seemed to stretch and warp, flickering at the periphery of vision. It felt as though the island itself was pulsating with an unknown energy, a heartbeat that thrummed beneath the surface. I confided my growing concerns to Dr. Thorne one afternoon as we pored over a sequence of particularly perplexing genetic data. Her response was dismissive, a laugh that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Old buildings," she said. "They have a way of settling into your mind, playing tricks. Yet, as she spoke, I saw her hand tremble ever so slightly, and I knew that she too felt the unease. The atmosphere of the Institute continued to shift, the sense of normalcy unraveling at the edges. The projects grew more ambitious, the results more erratic. Reports of failures were met with an insistence to push forward, to dig deeper into the genome, to uncover something unprecedented. The pressure intensified, and with it, the island's strange phenomena escalated. I began to wake in the night, slick with sweat, heart pounding to the rhythm of dreams I could not recall. There were whispers, voices that seemed to emanate from the very walls, breathing secrets in languages beyond comprehension. Sleep became elusive, the lines between reality and delirium blurring in the quiet hours before dawn. The climax came without warning, a crescendo of events that shattered the tenuous calm. It was another evening, the dining hall alive with conversation, when a sudden hush descended. The lights flickered once more, plunging the room into darkness. Before panic could fully take hold, a sound, a low, resonant hum filled the air, vibrating through our bones. It was a sound that spoke to some primal part of ourselves, a reminder of our vulnerability in the face of the unknown. When the lights returned, Dr. Mercer stood at the center of the room, an inscrutable expression on his face. He clapped his hands, a gesture meant to dispel the tension, yet it seemed hollow in the aftermath of that strange hum. "There is nothing to fear," he said, his voice steady. "We are on the brink of something extraordinary." But fear had already taken root, its tendrils winding through our consciousness. Over the following days, the island's mysteries deepened. Equipment malfunctioned inexplicably. Experiments produced results that defied logic. There were sightings, fleeting glimpses of figures in the periphery, shapes that dissolved into the mist before they could be fully discerned. It was as though the island was alive, aware, and responding to our presence in ways we could not fathom. I began to question my own sanity, the rational part of my mind wrestling with the irrationality of what I experienced. My colleagues, too, seemed changed, their eyes shadowed with doubt and exhaustion. Dr. Thorne, who had once laughed at my concerns, now spoke of feeling watched, her gaze darting to corners and corridors, as if expecting something to emerge from the shadows. Conversations with Dr. Mercer became exercises in futility. He remained unflappable, dismissing our fears with a wave of his hand, urging us to focus on the work. "We are pioneers," he insisted, navigating uncharted territory. Yet, his assurances rang hollow, echoes in a cavern of uncertainty. The final straw came one storm-swept night, the island gripped by a tempest that howled and raged against our sanctuary. I lay awake, listening to the wind's mournful wail, when I heard it, a voice, soft and insistent, calling my name. I rose, compelled by a force I could not name, and followed the sound through the darkened halls, past laboratories and libraries, until I reached a door I had never noticed before. It opened to a stairwell spiraling down into the bowels of the island. I hesitated only briefly before descending, driven by a need to uncover whatever truths lay hidden below. The air grew colder, the darkness thicker as I descended, the voice guiding me deeper into the heart of the island. At the bottom, I found myself in a cavernous chamber, its walls lined with screens displaying genetic sequences and data streams. In the center stood a tank, massive and filled with a luminescent blue fluid. Suspended within it was a figure, humanoid yet distinctly other, its features distorted, eyes closed as if in slumber. Dr. Mercer stood beside the tank, his expression one of quiet triumph. "Behold," he said, gesturing to the figure, "the future of humanity, a new Genesis." He spoke of advancements, of a new species born from our tampering with genetics, crafted to transcend the limitations of our biology. But there was something profoundly wrong about the creature in the tank, something that defied the natural order. I felt a visceral dread, a realization that we had ventured too far into realms we were not meant to explore. The voice in my head had grown silent, replaced by a dreadful understanding of our trespass. The days that followed were a blur of fear and confusion. The island seemed to pulse with life, its energies vibrating at a frequency that resonated with the very core of my being. I could not shake the feeling of being watched, of being judged by forces beyond comprehension. The island had become a living entity, and we were mere intruders within its domain. I knew then that I had to leave, to escape the island and its mysteries before I lost myself entirely. I confided in Dr. Thorne, who had reached a similar conclusion, her eyes haunted by what we had witnessed. Together we formulated a plan to depart, to return to the world beyond where we might find solace, or at least distance from the horrors we had uncovered. The night of our planned departure was tense, the island shrouded in a silence that pressed upon the soul. As we made our way to the dock, the path illuminated by the pale glow of the moon, I felt an overwhelming sense of finality. We were leaving behind more than just an island. We were abandoning dreams and ambitions that had once seemed noble, but had turned to ash in the light of reality. As the boat pulled away, I looked back at the silhouette of the Institute, its outline stark against the night sky. There were no words exchanged between us, only the shared understanding of what we had left behind. The island receded into the distance, consumed by mist and memory, and I felt a weight lift from my chest, even as a lingering fear settled in its place. The world beyond the island was unchanged, yet I found myself altered, my perceptions colored by the experiences I had survived. The voice that had once called to me was silent, yet its presence lingered like a shadow on the edge of consciousness. I knew that I would never truly escape the island, that it would haunt my dreams and waking thoughts, a constant reminder of human folly and ambition unchecked. In the months that followed, I attempted to resume a semblance of normal life, immersing myself in research and academia. But the specter of the Institute loomed ever present, a whisper in the corridors of memory that could not be silenced. I saw it in the eyes of my colleagues, in the cautious way they approached their work. The unspoken fear that we had glimpsed something that could not be unseen. The world continued to turn, indifferent to the revelations of a secret island and its experiments, yet I carried the burden of knowledge, the weight of what had been unleashed, a legacy of hubris and wonder intertwined. And as I lay awake at night, listening to the wind's gentle sigh, I could not help but wonder if somewhere beneath the surface of the world, the island still waited, biding its time, its secrets undisturbed, its new Genesis yet to awaken. There is a harmony in the mundane repetition of life that breeds a sort of complacency in most people. When my transfer to the remote government facility in Minnesota was approved, I welcomed the prospect of solitude as much as the frigid landscapes that promised a peaceful stagnation. My work, a series of unending research studies, involves sifting through endless streams of data about nonlinear time perception and evolutionary genetics. It was the kind of work that required solitude, and so the isolation suited me well. The facility was nestled deep within the Minnesota woods, its existence known only to a select few who deemed the research critical to national interests. The building itself loomed like a monolith of concrete and steel, surrounded by snow-laden pines that seemed to stretch endlessly. The air was crisp, biting at the skin, yet it was invigorating in its purity. Days would bleed into nights, marked only by the changing hues of the sky and the quiet hum of machinery that had become a constant companion. Life at the facility was uneventful, until one evening, standing at the edge of the property, I met David. He appeared out of the encroaching dusk, walking with a measured gait along the path that led back into the thick forest. His presence was as unexpected as it was unsettling, for the facility was sealed off from the outside world, accessible only through secured channels. A stranger's arrival was not just improbable, it was impossible. He introduced himself simply as David, with a voice that resonated with a calm certainty. His clothing was unusual, a patchwork of styles and fabrics that seemed to span decades, as if he had stepped through time rather than alongside it. His eyes, an unsettling shade of gray, seemed to hold the weight of countless stories, though he offered none at first. He merely smiled, a gesture both reassuring and disconcerting, and asked if I would walk with him. The decision to accompany David was not born out of curiosity, but rather an inexplicable compulsion. As we walked, he spoke in riddles about time, not as a linear path, but as a series of overlapping moments, a tapestry woven from the threads of countless lives and experiences. His insights seemed to unlock thoughts I had only ever touched upon in abstract theories, making the impossible seem plausible, even tangible. After our conversation, David would vanish as mysteriously as he had appeared, leaving no trace of his presence. Yet, as days turned into weeks, he continued to reappear like the tides, each visit as unpredictable as the weather. Our walks grew longer and his stories deeper, and soon the boundary between his world and mine began to blur. It was as if I was being inducted into a realm where time was not a river, but an ocean, vast and unfathomable. The first real disturbance came one evening during a heavy snowfall. David had been absent for several days, and in his absence, the facility's usual operations began to unravel in small but disturbing ways. Data sets that had been meticulously organized were jumbled. Sequences of genetic codes inexplicably rearranged. Equipment that had never faltered now malfunctioned with alarming regularity, as if responding to an unseen hand. I was not alone in noticing these anomalies. My colleagues, though initially dismissive, began to whisper among themselves, their apprehension growing with each unexplained occurrence. The facility, once a bastion of order, became enshrouded in an atmosphere of unease. It was as though the very fabric of reality had started to fray, each tear revealing glimpses of something beyond our understanding. David's next appearance coincided with a particularly chaotic day. The facility's systems had gone haywire, alarms blaring through the corridors without reason. He stood at the entrance, unaffected by the turmoil within. His presence, though calming, brought with it an unspoken urgency. As we walked, he spoke of change, of evolution beyond the physical, hinting at a convergence of timelines, a fusion of past, present, and future. His cryptic explanations left me with more questions than answers, yet there was an undeniable allure to his words. It was as if he held the keys to a hidden world, one where the constraints of time were mere illusions. The more I listened, the more I felt myself drawn into his narrative, a willing participant in a tale whose ending was both terrifying and exhilarating. As time, or what I perceived as time, progressed, the disturbances within the facility escalated. Colleagues reported seeing fleeting shadows, hearing whispers that echoed through the empty halls. Some claimed to have seen David themselves, though, when pressed, their descriptions varied wildly, as if they had each glimpsed him through a fractured lens. The line between reality and imagination grew perilously thin. The climax of these events arrived on a night where the facility seemed to pulse with a life of its own. The walls shuddered, lights flickered, and the air hummed with an electric charge that set every nerve on edge. David appeared at my side, his demeanor unchanged even as the world around us threatened to unravel. He spoke of a choice, a moment of convergence where paths diverged and destinies were forged. In that instant, clarity swept over me. I understood that my encounters with David had been leading to this point, that the boundaries between our worlds were collapsing, and that I stood at the nexus. The decision was mine alone, to step beyond the limits of what I knew, to embrace the uncertainty of a new reality. The temptation was undeniable, yet fear held me back, a fear of losing myself in the vast expanse of the unknown. David's eyes met mine, and in them I saw not just the weight of ages, but an invitation to transcend the boundaries of existence. But as the tumult around us reached its crescendo, doubt crept in, and with it, a creeping dread of the irreversible. I hesitated, and in that hesitation the moment passed. The facility, caught in the throes of its own storm, began to settle, the discord receding like a tide. David was gone, leaving in his wake a silence that echoed through the emptied halls. My colleagues, shaken but unscathed, returned to their work, the events of the past few weeks dismissed as an anomaly, an oddity in the grand scheme of science. Yet for me the experience lingered, a shadow that loomed over each waking moment. In the following days, I searched for traces of David, combing through records and archives, but he remained an enigma, a ghost in the machine of my mind. The facility, though restored to order, bore the scars of the encounter, a place forever touched by the inexplicable. The fear that lingered was not of David, nor even of the disruptions within the facility, but of the possibilities his presence had unveiled. What if time was truly an ocean, and I merely a sailor on its surface? What lay beneath those depths, waiting to be discovered or to devour the unwary? The questions haunted my dreams, pulling me toward a horizon I could never reach. Though life at the facility resumed its monotonous rhythm, the memory of David remained a constant reminder of a world beyond reach. A world where the ordinary gave way to the extraordinary. And as I walked the familiar paths of the Minnesota woods, I could not shake the feeling that he was still out there, watching, waiting, a guardian of secrets untold. The fear, that irrational yet ever-present fear, was that one day I might answer his call, and what I would find when I did.